In my hands, I have two brand new irons from Taylormade for 2024, and in today's video, we're gonna put them to the test to see if they're actually something special or just more of the same. So let's get right into it. Right guys, so these are the brand new P7CB and P770 irons for 2024, and I would argue this is one of the more intriguing iron releases from Taylormade, so let's quickly cover why. Now, a few years back, Taylormade released the P7MC, and while that was a very successful iron from Taylormade, and actually an iron that I really enjoyed, there were a lot of people out there who wanted something a little bit more forgiving than that without moving into a hollow body style golf club. And that's where the new P7CB comes in. This is a fully forged iron like you would expect for a CB, but Taylormade has actually milled out two pockets in the sole of this iron. One that's filled with tungsten kind of in the toe area, and one that is filled with a metal matrix composite in the heel area, both helping to boost forgiveness. Now in doing this, Taylormade was able to make more of what I would argue is a T100 style iron compared to the old 7MC, which was more competitive with something like a Titleist 620CB. And tour adoption really points to this idea, as well as Rory McIlroy actually put a P7CB 4 iron in the bag, showing that the forgiveness kind of should be on par with something like a P760, which is what Rory was gaming beforehand. Now with the new P770, there isn't necessarily a main focus on performance, but really an improvement in feel, turf interaction, and a more refined shape compared to the old model. That being said, Taylormade is claiming that this new 770 is going to be more forgiving over the old model, so it will be very interesting to see how it stacks up compared to the new P7CB. Retail pricing wise, you're going to be looking at $1,400 US for both of these irons in terms of a 7-piece set, and they come stock with dynamic gold mid 115 shafts and Golf Pride Z grips. Lastly, as we take a look at stock lofts of both of these irons, they actually fall pretty in line with each other, which makes me suspect these are going to be easier to combo compared to the old 7MC and P770. Nonetheless, guys, that pretty much covers all of the main info behind these irons, and we're set up on the range with GC Quad, ready to put these things to the test, so let's get to it. Alrighty guys, so we are all warmed up and ready to go. The way we're gonna work through this is we're gonna start with both pitching wedges, then 7 irons, then 4 irons, and as always, really just see how these kind of stack up and compare against one another. Starting with the P7CB pitching wedge, taking a look down at this thing, things I notice immediately: a little bit of belly in the leading edge, a little bit more of a rounded toe area. The real big thing I notice about this pitching wedge is the hosel to leading edge transition. There's a bit of a notch here, kind of where that hosel moves into the leading edge, and it gives the appearance of a little bit more offset. As you kind of look at this thing straight down, there's pretty much no offset. There's just an illusion of a little bit more because of how they've transitioned this. Nonetheless, that's about the only thing I don't love. In terms of sizing, not too big, not too small. I would say very middle of the road from a sizing perspective. Moved through the ground very nicely. Felt like there wasn't a ton of bounce, but also it wasn't like super diggy either. That was a really nice from a turf interaction perspective. In terms of numbers, 106 ball, 136 carry, 25 launch, 10,000 spin. Yeah, really good turf interaction. You know, something they've done with these is they've actually lowered the leading edge height. The nice thing is they don't feel like they're digging, even though that leading edge sits a little bit lower. I would say in terms of feel, absolutely phenomenal. I think Taylormade is extremely underrated from a feel perspective, and these are no exception to me. I would say very Mizuno-like in terms of feel. Yeah, really good. It's hard to describe. It's like it wants to get into the ground relatively quick, but it doesn't want to dig. In terms of numbers, 139, 107, 23, 9,500. Superb numbers for me. We'll go ahead and hit a flighted one now. Solid. I mean, I bottomed a little early there, but yeah, a little bit lower launch, 22, 104, 134, 9,800. I mean, the thing that I would say surprises me immediately off the bat is just the feel. I mean, they feel incredible. Now we're gonna go ahead and move up into the P770 pitching wedge. Taking a look down at this thing, to me, what I notice immediately is it's a little bit more of a straighter shape. You've got a straighter leading edge, a straighter top line. Offset on this, oddly enough, it looks like it has less offset. I actually think it's because of the way the leading edge looks. Because the leading edge is a little bit straighter, it kind of gives the appearance of less offset. I would say kind of when you look at them side by side, the offset's very similar. Definitely a little bit of a thicker top line. To be honest with you guys, this shape is really good. I love this shape. I would say if I had to choose between these two in terms of shaping, I would probably take the 770. Little thin there, but felt pretty good. Didn't really feel hollow. 104 ball, 135 carry, 22 launch, 10,000 spin. That one was a little bit of a better strike, but to me, just feels a little bit harsher than the 7CB, even on a good strike. I don't really know how to describe it. I wouldn't say it feels hollow. That's definitely something to note. Maybe making them feel a little bit more solid makes them feel a little bit less hollow, if that makes sense. So maybe that's something they did. 106 ball, 137 carry, 24 launch, 10,000 spin. So very similar numbers to the CB, maybe a little bit more ball speed. Yeah, I mean, that's a strike that's a little bit higher in the head, for sure. Spin dropped a little bit, 9,000. Launch went up a little bit, 24.5, 106, 138. To me, it just feels a little bit firmer than the 7CB. Turf interaction-wise, you can just tell this plays with a little bit more of a wider sole, a little bit higher bounce. We'll go flighted now. That was nice. Didn't pull it, which is helpful. And, I would say, again, turf interaction-wise, not quite as easy to get into the ground. Launch and spin-wise, very solid. Very similar to the CB. 22 launch, 9,700, 133, 103. So I think you're going to get a little bit more out of the 770 like you would expect. Let's go ahead and move up into the 7-irons now. Right, guys, so now we're going to go ahead and move up into the 7-irons. We'll start with the 7CB. Taking a look down at this P7CB 7-iron. Similar to the pitching wedge. I mean, you see a little bit of roundedness and kind of belly in the leading edge. The top line definitely straightens out a little bit in the 7-iron, which I like. I think that looks really good. But once again, where I think that they kind of messed up with this iron is just the hosel to leading edge transition, because this iron has pretty much no offset, but because of this notch here, it gives the kind of illusion of this iron having offset, or more offset than it actually does, which, it's just not my favorite thing, I would say. Wow, that felt really good. Bottomed maybe the slightest bit early there, but didn't dig on me. Caught it still relatively low on the face. Really, really solid from a turf interaction perspective on maybe not the greatest swing. 126 ball, 176 carry, 19 launch, 7,100. Feel absolutely phenomenal. I honestly can't even really begin to describe how good these feel. You wouldn't think it. Taylormade's not really necessarily known for feel, but it's just like a buttery, soft, solid strike. Yeah, and even on a lower strike there, it didn't feel nearly as harsh as like a 7MC. You can definitely tell there's a little bit more tech kind of packed into here. And that's really the big thing about this iron and why it would be more competitive to something like a T100. It's just gonna allow you to get away with more misstrikes. 127 ball, 182 carry, 18.7 launch, 5,900 spin. So a shot that was a lower face strike actually went a little bit further. One of the reasons is because it drew a little bit more and the spin dropped. But I mean, I could definitely see why you would play these over an MC, like 100%. Yeah, really good. I mean, these are so easy to launch. 126 ball, 179 carry, 19.9 launch, 6,200 spin. I'm a really big fan of these. These are actually very, very impressive to me. If they didn't have that kind of odd, hosel to leading edge transition, I would think that these would almost be a shoo-in to be in my bag. Let's go ahead and kind of work a couple. We'll go fade and then draw. Yeah, solid fade there. 121, 167, 7,400, 21. Love those numbers. Superb. I really like these. 128, 183, 16.8, 5,900. I would definitely say that these are a step up over the MCs. They're nicer. Like, they feel better. They're easier to hit. They launch a little bit higher. You can just tell that you're going to get away with more misstrikes, but still plenty workable. P7CB, 7-iron. Very, very solid. Let's go ahead and move up into the 770, though. Take a look down at this thing. I mean, kind of similar to the pitching wedge. It's just a little bit straighter. Straighter leading edge, straighter top line, straighter toe area. Again, it's kind of got that weird hosel leading edge transition, which I don't love, but because it's a straighter shape, it doesn't look like it has quite as much offset as the CB, oddly enough. Oh, that's much higher right off the bat. 127, 178, 19.5, 6,700. So not a great strike, and that thing just kind of felt like it shot up in the air. A little bit more ball speed, I think, as well. Definitely can feel the width of the sole more with this 770. That is a terrible strike and still straight up in the air. And that's really like the big advantage of an iron like this, is you can hit it really low and it will still get up for you. That launched at 19 on an extremely low face strike. 124 ball, so a little bit drop in ball speed, but still 179 carry, 5,800 spin. Pretty solid numbers on a relatively big miss strike. That was a good one. Got a little on top of it, which is why I pulled it a hair. But 128, 181, 18.5, 6,700. So it's a very consistent iron. I mean, that's definitely something that they wanted with this 770. A little bit more help, but still a lot of consistency. That was when I hit really good, and ball speed didn't jump up excessively. The spin didn't drop. So I mean, this is a solidly consistent iron. It's just going to offer you a little bit more help over the 7CB. But let's go ahead and work it. We'll fade here. Bottomed out hella early there. It was not a good strike. 117, 162, 21, 7,000. So I mean, still solid numbers on a, I would say at best that was a poor strike. At worst, that was a horrendous strike. Let's try to get a better fade than that. Come on. There we go, a little bit of a better strike. Not the greatest strike, but definitely better. And the spin went up. I love to see that. 166 carry, 21 launch, 8,200 spin. So yeah, I mean, if you're looking at an iron like this and you're worried it's gonna be super inconsistent in a 7 iron, I don't think you're gonna see that. We'll go bigger draw here. Yeah, I mean, pretty thin and still solid ball speed. 124, 177. Spin dropped like you would expect. 60, 100, 16 launch. So me personally, I do think I prefer the 7CB. It's just a little bit of a cleaner look. I think it moves through the turf a little bit better, not quite as wide of a sole. But that's the 7 irons. Let's go ahead and move up into the 4 irons now. Right, guys, so moving up into the 4 irons, we're going to start with the 7CB. Taking a look down at this 7CB 4 iron. To me, it's really funny. I mean, the mid and short irons actually look mid-size, if anything, maybe a little bit on the bigger side. This 4 iron looks small. I mean, this looks like kind of an MC 4 iron. It does not look super easy to hit, kind of intimidating from a sizing perspective. Shaping's really good on this iron. I mean, I think this is probably the best shaped CB iron I've looked at today. What they do is kind of as you transition into the longer clubs, they get a little bit straighter. So I would say this is the straightest shape for sure. Really fits my eye nicely. A little bit of offset, but not much. I mean, to me, I would definitely say that this is a good looking iron for sure, but intimidating. I mean, this does not look like it's going to be super easy to hit. So kind of a pull draw there. Went pretty high, which is surprising. 137, 208, 15 launch, 4,800. Pretty solid. It is funny with this iron, like, although it just looks like a forged cavity back, you can kind of feel help. And I know there's not like a ton of tech packed in here. There's a tungsten weight in the toe, and then they got that lighter material in the heel so they can push some weight to the perimeter, which is supposed to make it more forgiving, but they like feel more forgiving than something like an MC. It's hard to describe, but it's a really nice feel, and it's kind of a confidence-inspiring feel. Because like that's a low face strike there, and it doesn't feel dead or like it's not gonna go anywhere, and that went pretty far. 210, so it went further than the first one. 137 ball speed, same as the first one. 13.4, 4,500 on maybe not the best strike. So there's definitely something to be said for what they've done in the sole of these irons. I mean, I think you can totally feel it, and it doesn't feel like hot or like it's gonna go really far, but it's just a very confidence-inspiring feel. Once again, a low face strike. Still launched. 14, 136, 211, 4,200. The way I would describe this 4 iron is absolutely more forgiving than it looks. That's probably the best way I would describe it. I don't know if I would play it in the 4 iron because it's still kind of intimidating, but I definitely think I could. And I would never do that with like a P7MC or most cavity backs, because as you start to get those lower face strikes, those numbers drop pretty drastically. And with this, it's just not doing that. Let's go ahead and hit one more. Try to get a good strike out of it. Not the best swing. Just got on top of it, kind of hit like a pull draw, but super good numbers. 139, 215, 13.3, 4,200. Yeah, I mean, this is a really good iron. Absolutely more forgiving than it looks. There is stuff packed in here that you can't see, but you can definitely feel, I would say, as you make contact with the golf ball. That's the P7CB 4 iron. Let's go ahead and move up into the 770. All right, taking a look down at this. I mean, to be honest with you guys, this is an interesting looking shape. So the first thing I notice is the back kind of sticks out a little bit. This bar where it says P770, you can kind of see that as you set it behind the golf ball. Definitely more confidence inspiring than the P7CB. Shaping wise, again, really good. I mean, this thing is a very straight shape, I would say. And look, although it's more confidence inspiring than the CB for sure, in my opinion, it's still not a big head. I mean, there's no doubt about it. It's not like this looks like something game improvement-y. It still looks extremely players-like, just a little bit bigger, a little bit less intimidating. pretty big misstrike, and definitely feels like it had some ball speed, and it did. 141, 222, 13.8, 3,900. Damn, that is freaking far. My goodness me. So I mean, you're definitely gonna get a little bit more out of this than the CB. 139, 217, 14.4, 4,000. Yeah, I think for me, I would still probably play this in a 4-iron. I just like getting a little bit more out of this. That's kind of how I have my bag gapped. Feel-wise, I would definitely say this feels hotter. That CB feels like it has help at the bottom, but it's not hot. This feels like more of a hollow body golf club. The shorter and mid-irons kind of felt more solid. This feels more hollow. And once again, with the turf interaction, I mean, you can definitely feel the width of the sole more for sure. Yeah, this thing's really good. I like those numbers a lot. 141, 217, 14, 4,500. Just a little bit more out of this, a little bit easier to hit. I actually don't think you could go wrong with either of these. I just think it really depends what you're looking to get out of it. If you're looking to get a little bit more out of your 4-iron, that's where this is probably gonna do you a little bit more of a favor over that. Oh boy, that one was not a good strike. 141 though, 217, 14, 4,200. So I mean, as a whole, both really solid. Let's go over my final conclusions. Right guys, so final conclusions, we're gonna cover 5 different categories: looks, feel, turf interaction, workability, and forgiveness. We'll go ahead and start with the P7CB. In terms of looks with this iron, a little bit of a softer shape. I would probably say a little bit more Mizuno-like in terms of shaping. It looks pretty good to me. The real issue I have with this iron is the hosel to leading edge transition, like I've mentioned. Now, this iron does not have a lot of offset, but because of that transition, it kind of gives the appearance of more offset than it actually has, and it's not my favorite thing, and I'm not really sure why they did it, but definitely something to note that it is there in terms of looks. Feel-wise with this iron, that is where this iron is extremely impressive to me. It's very, very soft. I don't think TaylorMade gets enough credit for how soft their irons are, and this is absolutely no exception. The nice thing is you can kind of low face these and they don't feel super harsh. I think that that's what they've really improved on over the P7MC. They're just a little bit better on those misstrikes. Now, turf interaction wise, again, really good. You know, they've lowered the leading edge height in terms of how this sits in a square position at address, but the nice thing is they still have plenty of bounce on this iron. It's not like these are sharp from a leading edge perspective, so they kind of get you into the ground pretty easily, but they do not dig on you. Turf interaction wise, these are absolutely phenomenal in my opinion. Now, in terms of workability, you can hit these high, low, draw and fade them. I mean, they felt very easy to work in. One of the reasons is really because of that turf interaction. If you have good turf interaction, you feel very confident working the golf ball, and these are really solid from a workability perspective. But the real category I think that these irons absolutely shine at is forgiveness. You know, you do not see the tech in these irons when you look at the back of them, but it's there, and especially in the P7CB 4-iron, you really feel like you can get away with pretty severe misstrikes, which is something that I really have not seen in a CB style iron since the Titleist T100. These are really, really good from a forgiveness perspective, and I would definitely say more forgiving than they look, especially in the longer clubs. Now, getting up into the new P770, we'll start with looks. You know, this iron is definitely a little bit more of a straighter look compared to the CB. Looks really good to my eye from a shaping perspective. You still have that kind of odd hosel to leading edge transition, but I think it actually looks better in the 770s over the CBs. So looks-wise, it's tough for me to choose one of these over the other. I would say they're really just different in terms of how they look, but I would definitely say I probably prefer the shaping of the 770, but I really like the size of the CBs in those short to mid irons. They just look a little bit smaller, a little bit more controllable, at least to me. Now, in terms of feel, you know, these 770s, I would say are definitely a little bit different than 770s of the past, especially in the short to mid irons. They just feel a lot more solid. I don't really think they feel that soft out of the middle of the face. As you get into the 4-iron, it's definitely a little bit hotter, which I actually do really like. Now, whether people will appreciate that or not, it's kind of a subjective thing. You know, I don't really love how solid they feel. I wish they felt a little bit softer, but as they start to feel a little bit softer, they kind of start to feel a little bit more hollow. So it's one of those things where you kind of have to pick and choose your battles there. Getting up into turf interaction with the 770, you know, they've done a very similar thing to these irons like they did to the CB in the sense that they lowered how high the leading edge sits behind the golf ball. The main difference between these and the CBs is the sole width and the fact that these play with a little bit more bounce. So what I notice is that on on those shorter to mid iron shots, you can kind of feel this back edge catch a little bit more compared to the CB, which isn't something I love. It feels like these don't really want to get into the ground quite as easily. Where I do really like it is in that 4 iron. It feels like you can bottom out early and this thing isn't going to dig on you compared to the CB so much. So turf interaction wise, it's really subjective. I like how these are in the longer clubs, maybe not quite my favorite in those shorter irons. In terms of workability with the 770, you know, it's decent. I would not say it's quite as good as the CB, but to be fair to this iron, it does a pretty good job. You know, when I went to hit those cuts, the spin went up, which is something I really like to see. In the pitching wedge, it felt like I could flight this relatively similar to the CB, but there's really just something about the sole width in those shorter to mid irons that doesn't feel quite as easy to work compared to the CB. It just feels like this really wants to help you a little bit more compared to the CB that allows you to kind of have a little bit more control over what you're doing, if that makes sense. Forgiveness wise with the P770, you know, it kind of takes what's really nice about the CB and just adds a touch more. It's definitely not a game improvement iron by any stretch of the imagination, but it's just a little bit more user friendly. You know, if you're somebody who really wants to play CBs, but you're not really sure where you want to transition, you maybe don't have the greatest control over low point or curvature of the golf ball, or you just want a little bit more height out of your irons, that's where the 770 comes in. It's not going to do all the work for you, but it's definitely going to help you a little bit, specifically on those missed strikes, low on the face, or for somebody who tends to bottom out a little bit early. This is not going to dig nearly as much as something like a P7CB. Like I said, just a little bit more user friendly. As a whole, guys, I think both of these are pretty solid irons. You know, it's tough for me to comment on like a P770 in the shorter clubs because this is probably an iron that I wouldn't use in the shorter clubs, but in that 4 iron, it's really nice. It's really just a slight step up over something like the P7CB, but I think in this video, the star of the show is this P7CB. This iron is unbelievably impressive. They've done a great job at packing tech into an iron that just looks like a standard CB. It is absolutely superb. I'm very excited for you guys to test this iron. I think a lot of you guys are going to really like this, and might I add, the back of this iron looks unbelievable. I would maybe argue this is the best looking iron back I've ever seen in my life. It is really cool. All that being said, guys, if you've had the chance to test either one of these or both of these, I would love to hear your opinions. So go ahead and drop those in the comments down below. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to give it a like. Make sure you're subscribed to the YouTube channel and you click that notification bell so you're notified anytime that we post a new video. Additionally, make sure you're following us on our other social media channels, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and TikTok. Always great content on those channels as well. We'll catch you in the next video. Peace.